Welcome back to Robert's Reviews. Got a good one for you today. Today we are going to be talking about Horton, Here's a Who. This film came out in 2008, and it is a childhood classic for me. The people that I grew up with, I'm sure, also watched this at least once. I mean, it was great. It's a fun story. It actually is the story that follows, obviously Dr. Seuss's Horton Hears a Who, but the musical, Seussical, the musical, kind of follows this storyline loosely. I was actually in that. That was my very first show that I've ever been in. I played the Grinch, and I had a great time. And so I already knew a lot about the storyline. This movie actually came out before I was in that show. But I don't think I watched it very much when I was younger. I watched it once or twice when I was younger, for sure. But it's one of those movies that you watch once and you never really need to watch it again. It's there. Everyone knows Horton Hears a Who, so I don't have to talk about it very long. This might be one of my shorter videos that I've ever put out in my life. But I think the big reason for that is simply because everyone knows it, and it's an animated film. And animated films, for me, don't need long reviews because I will judge the animation as a whole, and then I will judge some voice acting, but voice acting is very hard to judge. So anyway, let's talk about Horton Hears a Who. So, essentially what happens is, Horton the elephant is splashing around in his water, taking a bath, and then he hears a little... He's like, there must be people on this little speck. And he finds a little speck, puts the speck on a clover, and then he is trying to put it somewhere safe where, wind and rain and stuff can't affect it, so that the Who's can live normal lives. And the Who's live on the speck. And the rest of the animals of the forest do not believe that there are Who's there because they don't have ears as large as Horton, so they can't hear that the Who's are there. The Who's are there, and they are awesome. We gotta love the Who's. And that's basically it. I mean, besides the fact that the animals are trying to kill the speck, except for Horton, I mean, that's pretty much it. I do want to talk about a couple problems that I have with the film. So for one, the animation's great. I loved the animation. I think it was clear and it was fun. The issue that I had was plot mostly. For one, I just told that entire story and barely missed any strong details. And it took me about 2 minutes. And this was about an hour and a half long. And I think it could have been shortened to a TV movie size, about an hour long. And it might have been better. One of the biggest things that I had an issue with for this story was I didn't really care about the Who's almost at all. I cared way more about Horton the elephant than I did about the Who's. I'm like, if they hurt this elephant, I will cry. But if those Who's die, oh well, no one's gonna know. That was kind of my thought process about this movie. That being said, I mean, if you're a young child, this is a big deal for you. I mean, you're probably thinking about how much you love the Who's, but I really didn't care. Which is a problem because we should have cared more about the Who's than we should about Horton the elephant. Because the whole point about the whole movie is to save the Who's. But, again, not really my problem. I didn't write the film. But that's the big negative, is that I didn't really care about the Who's almost at all. Which, of course, is a problem. It's a pretty big negative for me, though, because it made it so that anytime that Horton wasn't on screen, I was kind of bored. Anytime we were focusing on the Who's, I really was kind of bored. I didn't really care very much about the Who's or the what's or the why's, So that was a big problem for me. One of the things that I heard about this film, just growing up, was that people were distracted by Jim Carrey's voice. And I 100% disagree. I actually thought Jim Carrey did a great job because he uses regular, normal talking voice. He might have elevated it a little higher, but obviously it was Jim Carrey. I mean, there's no telling it's not Jim Carrey, but I think that, let's talk about the voice acting. Jim Carrey played Horton the elephant and was not distracting to me. I think he did a really good job and it was fine. I totally believe that was Horton the elephant. I had no real care in the world that that might have been Jim Carrey. Steve Carell as the mayor was great. I mean, Steve Carell has just such one of those voices that, you obviously it's Steve Carell, but, he can change his voice so often, so much, that, you're like, it's Steve Carell, but boy, does it not sound like Steve Carell. So the voice acting for me was not distracting. In fact, maybe the only person that distracted me might have been Seth Rogen a little bit, but I'm not going to talk about the voice acting very long because it doesn't really matter. I mean, it's a small. It's really the mayor and Horton did almost all the talking, and that's pretty much it for the whole film as a whole. The reason that I'm not going to give it an A is because of the plot where I don't really care about the Who's. And I think that we should have focused more on the Who's and make it seem like they were more in trouble because there's nothing that really showed that like they were in danger. Sure, there's like climate change, which is a problem here on Earth, but you know, in 2008, no one really cared about that. And I think it's interesting that we see the Who's and we're in danger and we don't even really care about them because they're so tiny, which obviously shows that I'm an awful person, but it's also a cartoon and I don't really care about them. They need to make some way to make the Who's seem like they're more in peril. Even for a children's movie, it really didn't seem like they were going to die. In fact, I was way more scared for Horton towards the end, that they were just going to kill Horton over this tiny speck that no one should have cared about. Why was it a big deal? I don't understand. I mean, I guess politics, but like a child's not going to understand politics. A child's not going to care that it could ruin the forest, that there's a crazy elephant. Just that's why I'm giving it a B minus, because for one, it's fun for kids, and the entertainment value is pretty high, but I was distracted most of the time by the fact that I did not like the Who's. If you want to talk about this film, go ahead and drop some stuff in the comments below. We can have a conversation about it. Join the Facebook group. We can talk there. This is a pretty short video for you because it is a short. It's an animation, so there's not a lot to talk about. Leave a comment for what you want me to review next, and I will add it to my list. It is a long list, but I will get there. And make sure you subscribe because I know that some of you are not subscribed, and it makes me very sad. So make sure you do that, all right? And always remember to keep watching films. And as always, I will see you in the next video.